The heart of every man craves a great adventure, but life doesn't usually feel that way. Jesus speaks of narrow gates and wide roads, but the masculine journey is filled with many twists and turns. So how do we keep from losing heart while trying to find the good way when life feels more like a losing battle than something worth dying for? Grab your gear and come on a quest with your band of brothers who will serve as the guides in what we call the masculine journey. The masculine journey starts here now.
Welcome to the Masculine Journey. We are very glad to have you with us today, and I'm excited today that this is Andy's week. Andy's week to pick a movie.
Andy?
Yahoo! Yes, we could have Andy.
I don't know. It sound after all the pre-show discussion, I'm not sure I really want to be here. If anybody wants to stand in, please.
That's okay. I'm sharing a mic with Robbie, so I'll just pull it away from him every now and then.
Yeah. Please do.
Yeah.
No, we started, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, something like that, this series on, what's your favorite movie? And it's not just what's your favorite movie. What has God taught you through a movie that really spoke to your heart? And so the first week we had, Robbie, what was yours? It was
Lincoln.
It was Lincoln, and then we had the painful second week, which was Jim's, which he can't defend himself.
That was Princess Bride.
Yeah, Princess Bride, right? And then the last week we had yours, Darren.
We had Point and Shoot, which was mine, and then when Andy brought up his this week, I was like, man, I wanted that one, and it was just one that I had kind of forgotten about, but I used Robbie's system. Robbie said, he came up with 20 movies and looked through them and kept saying, okay, which one do I want? If I could only watch one right now, which one would it be? And that's kind of where I ended up on Point and Shoot, and that's probably where Andy ended
I just
up.
usually end up at Shrek. And I don't
that's
know how.
next week.
Yeah, it might be Shrek next week. Going back and forth between that and another one. But Andy, what is the movie for this week?
So it's Unbroken, and just kind of a preparation. It's in the it's sequels in the theaters now, and that's not really why I picked it, because there's been other times when we wanted to use clips from it, or I've wanted to use clips from it, but they didn't really work out because there is so much dramatic pause in this movie, and it's hard to get good clips, and you'll hear some of that on the clips. But I chose it because I've really felt like there's a lot of aspects. They're not overt like what we bring out in the Masculine Journey. A lot of times this is somebody that hasn't really really dedicated walking with God, but you'll see a lot of how God's hand was on him and really what the plan God had for him in his life. But a little bit more about Unbroken. It's the story of Louis Zamperini. Started out as a kind of a wayward kid in a strict Catholic home. He went on and he kind of got some direction from his brother. He went on and ran in the Olympics, the 1938 Olympics, and did fairly well. Ended up going to war, was shipwrecked, shipwrecked on the sea for like 47 days, and then he's rescued, but he's in a POW camp. And I just wanted to give the synopsis because there's so much to talk about, and we'll set up the clips, but I just wanted to give the backstory a little bit.
Yeah, the book is like 9 million pages long.
But you know what? The book is amazing.
It is. You and I read the book at the exact same time.
Yeah, it was written by Laura Hildebrand.
Right.
That wrote
Seabiscuit. Yeah.
And she did a lot of research on it, and it's just an amazing book, and it's an amazing story, and the movie touches on a lot of those pieces of it. Mm-hmm. But why don't you talk a little bit about this first clip as we start to learn more about Louis and his life?
So the first clip, and some of them you'll be there. It's it'll be hard to hear some of the stuff and understand what's going on. It's a very visual movie, but anyway, Louis gets in trouble. Just the backstory behind that is just he's got a strict father that's not really that close, and he's kind of going.
Are they speaking Italian in this? By the way?
There is some Italian on there, and I think I can pick up.
Vinny's not here to.
No, Vinny's not here
translate,
to interpret. No, so I hate that. He's not. Well, we have to do a call in for him to. And then there's another clip as part of that clip. It's kind of his brother kind of steps in to trying to give him some guidance. So
yeah, he was in the movie. He was in trouble a lot.
Right.
It wasn't anything really serious.
Right.
It was just kid stuff. But at the time, he was running from the police a fair amount.
Part of it is he was a Italian kid that only spoke Italian in an area in California, and he was being beaten up and that kind of thing. So he's kind of just embattled, kind of.
All right, here's our first clip.
Hey! reason you're not performing school now is because of the respect we have for your parents. Everybody in town wants you put away. Sorry, Louise, he was fighting again. And, we found this. He painted the bottle. It's liquor.
This is so dumb.
Since when were you so smart? Come on, faster.
Why? No one's chasing.
I'm chasing you.
Can't do this, Pete. I'm not like you. I'm nothing. Just let me be nothing.
What are you talking about?
I can't make a track team. I didn't even know why you
Yes,
want
you
me
can.
to.
If you can take it, you can make it.
What?
You can take it. You can make it. All right, you train. You fight. Way harder than those other guys, and you win. You get out from under them. Or you keep going the way you're going, and you end up as a bum in the streets. You can do this, Lou. Just gotta believe you can.
I don't believe.
I do.
So, Andy, that clip has lots of pieces in it. But what really, some of the things that spoke to your heart in there?
Well, I think we all get into that situation where we just need somebody to believe in us. And really, those are pictures of God to us. We know, the devil likes to tell you that, you're worthless. I mean, you heard it in his voice. He's like, why bother with me? And that's the way we can get sometimes, particularly if we listen to the enemy and make agreements. And so we need those strong figures, people who love us, people who we respect, to speak into our lives and tell us something that we don't see in ourselves, or the potential as well.
Yeah, and in Louis' story, he happened to choose his brother,
Right.
that as you point out, kind of does father him
Right.
throughout the thing. And there was a quote that they had in there that was pretty instrumental. We talked a little bit about the show. What was that one? If you can take it, you can make it.
Oh, if you can take. Okay, there was a couple other quotes, but
Yeah.
It really. Go ahead, Darren.
Well, that one really spoke to me because if you go on and read the book is so much more brutal than the movie, but you have to think that 1,000 times while he was being beaten up, or 1,000 times while he was thinking, why am I adrift out on the open sea? Why am I a prisoner in, Kwajalein, Death Island?
Right.
You have to think that he had to remember Pete's words. If you can take it, you can make it. Just keep taking it.
Right.
And that it's not about getting out of taking it. It's about making it. And I think that had to have been a huge part of his story.
And I remember reading the book and watching the movie, but especially in the book, there were times I had to set it down.
Oh, yeah.
I just couldn't read it anymore because it was so brutal.
It was.
What he went through, and we'll get to that a little bit more in a minute. But, Andy, from there, we kind of move into the next stage in his life.
Right.
So he starts running, and what happens from there?
So he does very well. In fact, I think he set the American record or world record at that time for fastest mile time, I believe it was.
Yeah, fastest mile by
for a high schooler. Right.
Yeah.
So then he makes the Olympics, and he's not able to run the distance he wants. He has to run longer, which kind of puts him out of his place, but he still makes the Olympics team. He trains really hard in New York, loses a bunch of weight. He goes over on the trip. He eats himself, eats so much because he's one of those depression kids. And then he does okay in the Olympics, but he doesn't do that well. But this is his brother. He's sending him off to the Olympics. Pete once again speaks into his life, and it's an important part of the movie.
Tornado smoked the mile in 4 minutes 21.3 seconds. Zamperini is now officially the fastest high school runner in American history. Folks, this kid is on his way to the Olympics.
Why would I come? You're not going to win.
Sure, I know that. It's all right. 4 years' time, next Olympics, that's when I show him. This is just the tryouts for
Tokyo. Smart kid. Take care of yourself, all right? Gonna have a little fun, too, huh? Say hi to those pretty German broads for me? You know it. Come here.
Thanks, Pete. For everything.
Come on. moment of pain is worth a lifetime of glory. Remember that.
That's the line that got me, Andy.
Yep.
A moment of pain is worth a lifetime of glory. And I have to believe that there were so many times when, he remembered that as well. Right. Now, Pete is telling him that because basically he's a small guy. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the runners that he competes against feel like the way to beat him is just to beat him, literally. Absolutely. To beat him up and to knock him out of his lane and all those different things. And so he's just saying, hey, look, again, it's that if you can take it, you can win this thing. And that particular line in the movie definitely makes, now talking about it before the show, Jim brought up the point that a lot of times in our lives, it's a moment of glory for a lifetime of pain.
Right.
Making a big mistake. It could be a moment of glory for a lifetime of pain.
Right.
But it could also be a lifetime of pain, of suffering, of dealing with bad stuff or hard stuff for an eternity of glory.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we go through here, the suffering or whatever, I think there's a scripture that talks about that it's it really is, and you can't even equate them. The little bit of suffering, which seems like a lot, really is nothing compared to the glory that we will have.
And think of what happens in his life, though. That, he was in prison for 3 years, but for 40, 50 years afterwards,
right.
He gave God the glory for coming through that.
Right.
And that story made so much more impact to his message.
And I think a lot of it depends on your definition of glory.
Yeah.
Pete's glory was seen through Louis.
Right.
Right, because of the impact that he made on him. And I think sometimes we look at glory as being such a small thing that, we really don't realize when God's used others in our life till we look back and see it. And we often don't know how he's used us.
Right.
Right, in others' lives. And I think that's part of that whole glory.
Absolutely.
Right. We have a boot camp coming up. Robbie, do you remember when that is?
November 1st.
Yeah, I like throwing that at you. November 1st to the 4th. You need to go to masculinejourneyradio.org to register now. We're going to have a great time. It's just going to be amazing. God's going to be there for you. He's got some cool things to tell you. I can't tell you what it is, but he can. You don't want to miss it. Hi, this is Sam with Masculine Journey. I'm here with my son Eli. We're going to talk about ways that you can help support the ministry. One way, you can go to smile.amazon.com. There's information on our website there on how to do that.
Then you can go to facebook.com where you can click the donate button, or you can go to masculinejourneyradio.org. Once again, look for the donate button.
Or if you want to mail something in, mail it to P.O. Box 550, Kernersville, North Carolina, 27285.
I am William Wallace, and I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny.
God has set within each of us a masculine heart. Why? Why did he give you that heart? And what does the Christian life have to do with any of that?
Come join Masculine Journey Radio for a boot camp, November the 1st through the 4th, based on John Eldridge's book, Wild at Heart.
And when might that be again?
That's a great question, Tiny Jim. November the 1st through the 4th. Go to masculinejourneyradio.org.
From up above I heard the angels sing to me these words. And sometimes in your eyes I see the beauty in the world. Oh, now I'm floating.
I just want to keep listening to that. It's
not a bad song.
Yeah, well, what is that song?
That's Coldplay, and they play that at the end. I think it's called Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
I'd heard it at the movies and forgot about it, and then
you just like to pick band names that Robbie hasn't heard of.
Yeah, that's it. He's over there giving me the stink eye when I've never heard that.
What did we have? Three Doors Down?
Yeah.
But he could wrap his head around that one.
He brings in that ancient stuff that I've never heard of either.
Yeah, Slim Whitman only has so many tens.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the story of today. We're talking about the movie Unbroken, which is the Louis Zamperini story, and when we left, he's kind of coming up from a rough childhood, right? And he's starting to find some glory,
right?
right, in the Olympics, and it was actually a brutal race for him too. If you read that in the book, wasn't it, Darren?
Yeah, it was, and he finished 8th. He probably could have won. He ended up he wasn't feeling well. He was sick. As Andy said, he ate too much and everything else, and then he ends up. But he gets this is the weird thing. He gets the eye of Adolf Hitler, and Adolf Hitler actually, wants to meet him and shake his hand. I guess he thought he was a good Aryan boy or something.
Yeah,
I don't know, but he does that, and then shortly thereafter he ends up in the military because we've started World War II at that point in time, and the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor, and he joins up like many young American men did at that time, and that's the next chapter.
Right. So in this next clip, they're getting ready to go out. They'd already had a really rough mission. They had landed. They'd went out and bombed and came back and landed a emergency landing on the runs. So they've already experienced some fright from potentially falling out of the sky. So they get assigned a pretty rough plane, and this is right before they go out. It's his pilot is praying, and he just comes up on him. So
now you're praying? Busy before. My mother does that sometimes.
A lot of people do this.
You say anything back?
Yeah.
What?
Says my bombardier's a dope.
Really?
We usually wait for the humor. I mean, we always put the humor first, but it's kind of in the middle here. But what I liked about that, though, was we're so about in the masculine journey. If you haven't, come across listening prayer, you've kind of missed the masculine journey. It's a key part of what we're doing, and it's a play on that of just okay, what's God saying? Are you just talking to Him and you're not hearing anything back? And it says that whole interaction. And as we know, on down the road, Louis definitely hears from God. So
yeah, and he recognizes other people do it. He's just not really subscribed to it himself.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And, they go out on that mission. And Phil's trying to kind of lighten the load a little bit, too, because Phil is praying, and it's one of the first times that he sees him praying. And in his mind, he knows that they're getting ready to take the plane out that they call the flying coffin. Right, yeah. And so, and he knows. And so when he sees Phil praying, he's kind of thinking, "Uh-oh, this is really bad." Yep. And I like how Phil is a good leader there, and just kind of plays it down a little bit, and just let's go on with the mission.
Absolutely.
One of the things that they talked about in the book that really we talked before the show that amazed me was there were so many planes that didn't come back that weren't shot down.
Right.
It was really our first entrance into that type of warfare.
Yeah, preventive maintenance was not a big deal.
Yeah, they didn't know what that meant. Right. Yeah, and so there were a lot of them were flying coffins, and the guys knew that going out.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to pick up on this clip. Is there anything you want to set up on it?
So the next one is they've been shot down. They're in the water, and there's various levels of survival as you can imagine. No water. You've got sharks coming around. You're trying to have nothing to eat. So they're dealing with all that. But then a storm comes up, and I was like, okay, after all this stuff of trying to survive, then a storm comes up, and it's kind of just Louis' response to that storm.
Why do we live and the others didn't? Why are we here now?
Here's the plan. You go on living the best you can. You try to have some fun along the way. And then one day it's over. You wake up and there's an angel sitting at the edge of your bed. Angel says, "Okay, you can ask me all those dumb questions now, because I got all the answers."
That's what you believe.
Yeah.
through this. If you answer my prayers, I swear I'll dedicate my whole life to you. I'll do whatever you want. Please.
So Andy, that was Louis praying at that point, right?
Right, yeah. So the first part I didn't neglected to say, kind of, it was a discussion Phil and I had just about the belief in God and whether he believes he's really there, whether he created the stars. And you can kind of see even Phil's got a little jaded or kind of a Solomon attitude, from Ecclesiastes of basically, you just try to have some fun and get through with life. So it wasn't really, he was providing a lot of direction at that time. But shortly after that is when the storm hit, and that's Louis praying out to God. And I thought it was interesting is he didn't just say God, he called him Father. So he was finally getting a picture of not only God as some ethereal thing out there, but actually calling him Father. And we'll see the book, and the movie, he goes on and he doesn't really necessarily follow up on that till much later in his life. But God heard that commitment.
Mm-hmm. And then so he prays this, and very, very quickly in the movie he's had this time where he's really had this interaction with God, the storm subsides, and then we kind of pick up in this next clip here.
Before we get there,
yeah,
I want to add that there's a couple of significant things. I think it's absolutely huge that we all get to a place in our life where we need something outside of ourselves, where we realize I'm not capable of doing this on my own. Yep. And it, that's where he makes the switch to light speed as far as I'm concerned. In other words, right there, he realizes there's something greater than me. It's outside of myself, and I need that. Right. And it kind of changes everything. But the other thing that I think is significant is you can see where God has been orchestrating all these fathers into his life. He orchestrated clearly, his original earthly father, but then the brother, and certainly there were coaches there in the Olympics. Right. And now we've got this pilot who's going to show him about prayer and so God's orchestrating, the father role throughout that. And God's not the backup plan father. I mean, he's the one who's brought all this into his life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So he has this moment with his father, and then what happens?
So then he shortly they get rescued, but they get rescued by the enemy. So he ends up being taken to a POW camp, a couple of them. He gets introduced to this evil warden called the Bird, and it's very, I don't know, he just tortures the crap out of him. I think Darren said, remembered from the book, there was probably 150 torture scenes.
It was horrible. I mean, it was one after another, after another, after another, and then they would be nice to him, and you think, oh, finally, it's going to just end, and then boom, here it comes again, and being rescued by the enemy. I love the way you said that, Andy. I don't know how many times in my life I've been rescued by the enemy. And ended up in a POW camp, ultimately, and didn't realize it, obviously, at the time. Thought it was salvation, probably, but got rescued by the enemy.
Absolutely.
There's probably a boot camp talk in there somewhere.
There probably is. And they've put him through all sorts of humiliation and things. And at this point, when we pick up this clip, what's happened right before that?
So right before that, they've let him come in and send a message through to his family through the radio, and that's all good. But then they try to come back and get him to speak propaganda against the U.S., and he won't do it. So he ends up going to the prison back to prison camp. They made it to where he had all this good meals and all that if he would have stayed, but he said no. Went back to the prison camp, and then the part of the torture that the Bird sets up is for his own friends, his own POWs, to come and hit him. And so as part of that, where they come and punch him, just drill him, but none of them want to do it. But then they pull out Phil and they act like they're going to torture him. So he tells them to go on, come on and hit me.
And we don't have time for the clip because we've talked a lot, but that was a key point that they forced these people that had respect for Louis
Right.
to literally, I mean, hit him as hard as they could. And if they didn't, there was a price to be paid by one of the other friends.
Right. And they respected him to the point where they were willing to be beat by them, themselves. In fact, Phil was willing to let whatever happened to him happen to him.
Right.
He was. And it was out of respect for Louis, because they had all seen how much torture Louis had already put up with. And I love the way, I wish we could play that scene maybe next time, but the fact of the matter is that's the enemy most of the time is you're either going to do it my way or I'm going to keep torturing you.
Right.
Or I'm going to torture you while you do it my way.
Yeah.
You just don't see it coming.
Yeah, right.
And Andy, what a great movie. There's so much more to that movie, and thank you for picking it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you want to read about a 1,000-page book, it's worth reading.
It's
it really
a phenomenal
is.
book. One of the best books I've ever read in my life.
It's probably the last book I read. But anyway, it's a great book. Go to masculinejourneyradio.org to register for the boot camp. We want to see you there. We want to know what God's doing with you, because we know He's going to do some awesome things, and He's going to do some awesome things with us. masculinejourneyradio.org.